New Resident Evil game looks great. After much promotion that Paris was the level that they spent the most time on, it opens up with an area that is, well, it's exactly the same as vanilla, except, well, once you get downstairs, there's more cats. Twice as many cats, in fact. This makes no sense since the basis of the stakes with the grizzle hunting quest is that if you fail, the cat lady will be completely broken after losing everyone who matters to her. If you succeed, she finds hope again and desires to have more cats live under her care.
Hurrah, my kitties! Now they can go out to play and not get eaten.
Incidentally, this is a thing that you should probably consider whenever you're trying to mod or emulate a game like Deus Ex or basically any of the BioWare titles. Is there supposed to be multiple reactions that the player can have to an outcome? For example, this woman is a few sandwiches short of a picnic and sent me on a quest to avenge the deaths of her stray cats. Fuck her. If I didn't get an XP for this, I'd skip it. Or, this poor woman has only been hanging on by a thread. She's been using her life to care for cats. I've made the world a little better by helping her. I actually suspect that she was originally only going to have one cat left, but that made it too easy not to notice the cat and to be confused later when she talks about her kitties. The way her dialogue goes, it could go either way, but in any case, revision, she's got a mid-sized fortune in physics-defying Siamese cats. Yay. Then we move into the radiation room, which is absolutely exactly how we left it. Great. Now remember, the idea is that Silhouette has been creating problems for years, and by problems, I mean they indirectly created the
UNESCO, formed by executive order after the terrorist strike on the statue.
So, for us to go straight from an abandoned building into this immaculate neighborhood kind of negates all of that. One of the ways Deus Ex told its story was to have JC move between areas with different levels of influence by Majestic 12 so the player could see the differences. In New York, they've taken over the authorities and suppressed the population to the extent where people are afraid to go outside. It's led to desperation among the masses and the elite alike. In Hong Kong, we have an area where Majestic 12 is still getting their footing. They have some control over the authorities, but mostly people are fine, and Majestic 12 needs to rely on more complex and risky coercion techniques. In Paris, we see a place where Majestic 12 have realized their goal. They control everything and everyone in government. They deploy their own troops on the street and have been given authority over the police. So the end result of this is... everywhere is richer and nicer than in the richest suburb of Paris today. So basically, rather than being hell on earth, it seems that Majestic 12's military occupation of France has somehow turned it into some sort of lovely paradise, which is probably exactly what Majestic 12 would like you to believe, as it's a common myth spun by occupying forces and fascist groups, etc. Which means that basically Caustic Creative are confirmed as working for Majestic 12. Now they did install these weird sort of military-esque checkpoint things with some controls, and they did install some oddly finished walls that have gates and everything and appear to have been here as long as Paris has been there, but for some reason the controls are in this sort of crappy temporary checkpoint building. So I don't know what maybe Bob Page was thinking ahead when he set this up, who knows. But basically, yeah, this seems to be set up here. They've got the robots, they've got the commandos, they've got these heavy machine gun emplacements, but nobody in Paris actually seems to be suffering for it. Like, everything else seems fine. Though, as a side note, in case you're worrying about gameplay, well, even though they're meant to be a more elite unit, the commandos in this area are not any sort of threat, really, provided that you deal with them proactively. Apparently you can sneak too, but why bother? You may want to avoid using orcs though, simply because unlike literally every other commandos in the game, these guys do not have bioelectric cells on them for, like, no reason. So if you set foot into the metro, the first thing you notice is that it doesn't look like any train station anywhere. For starters, it has this giant window, and then it has all these, like, pretty luxurious stores and pot plants and stuff set up here. What is going on here? Like, is this place under occupation? Why do train stores have unbreakable windows? Why is there a convenience store still manned and the guy in it actually an arms dealer? Doesn't he have, like, a lot of other work to do with running the convenience store? And doesn't this seem sort of, like, suspicious? In the original, he was just, like, manning an information desk, which, yeah, you could use that as a cover to say, yeah, I'm just here to let people know the trains aren't running. Is MJ12 somehow not suspicious that he's running a convenience store when no one's allowed near it? Who knows? We just don't know. We just don't know. Then there's the side passage, which, like the rest of the Deus Ex world, is packed full of boxes and more boxes and more boxes and security cameras. And then we come to my favourite. Luxury bathrooms in the middle of a public metro. I mean, look, the ladies' room even has fresh flowers placed on there. Does anyone know anywhere that, like, has bathrooms this swishy that doesn't have a cover charge? I don't. And in the men's, we have the world's most hapless guy to ever hold a flamethrower. Like, I was going to shoot him with the sniper rifle, but then I thought, nah, that's unfair. So instead what I did was, I snuck up on him, and then I shot him in the back of the head with the silenced pistol. Then later I thought that was unfair, so I shot him in the face with the silenced pistol.
Hello?
A lot of good that flamethrower was doing. A lot of good.
Bogey. Gotcha.
Arming these guys with lambs clearly, like, works out so well. And more ridiculous advertising for things that no normal person can presumably afford, but look great on graphic design portfolios. And let's check out this back area. And what do we have? Computers with nothing on them. A crate with a bioelectric cell. Classic paintings at a table. Like, 2 lockers, but 4 chairs. And pots and pans, but no stove. Like, This is supposed to be immersive. This is supposed to be based off something real. This is supposed to be a metro station. I'm not getting that vibe. Maybe metro stations are different in... No, I'm pretty sure that no metro stations are like this anyway. At all. Ever. Unsurprisingly, the only parts that actually look like real areas in Paris are the parts that were created by Ion Storm originally, and doubtlessly with a lot of reference material in Paris, since Warren Spector had this general view that when using real locations, he wanted people who had been there to feel familiar. Now, I don't expect Caustic Creative to have made more assets like this, because this is a shit ton of work. Like, this is like a huge investment of time, but there were things they could have done. Like MJ12 propaganda, letting the people know that they had no alternative but to obey, or something like that. I mean, presumably you've played Half-Life 2, you know what occupation is supposed to look like. And then you could have, say, examples of silhouette resistance propaganda, graffiti, or, you know, just their own posters. And then you could have examples showing the consequences of silhouette's resistance and how MJ12 is dealing with that counter propaganda. Or at the very least, you could have like done something with Building 14, or maybe the inside of the Catacombs building. Really, this is an obstacle that JC Denton could never overcome. Oh god. I'm back in the Crypts. I feel that the inclusion of the indestructible gate that requires you to operate their stupid lever, and the crawling through the water past the corpse of the maintenance officer who's there for no reason, really goes well with this wheelchair-friendly ramp. And this room, which has just one skull in the middle for, like, is it a trap? Is it something special? Let's find out after we loot this chest. So with all the goofy shit in this mod and all the excessive and bizarrely esoteric achievements, I'm actually genuinely disappointed that I got nothing for doing that. So let's talk about what Harris had to say about his redevelopments in the following area. Specifically, well, I'll just read it word for word. Now, a few words about Bunker 1. We decided to build it all over again because we think it was a big joke. Seriously, what kind of bunker is that? Just a big, roundy, and empty crap. We also built Bunker 2 from scratch, which was the exact same piece of crap as Bunker 1 and 3. At the moment, the only bunker that is left to get revisioned is Bunker 3, where the MJ12 have put up a base. Also, all these bunkers will be different from each other. That hurts to read. Okay, let's try to spin this into a positive, and basically the first thing we should talk about is the use of repetition and negative space in design for diegetic storytelling and game design. Because these changes are a classic example of Dunning-Kruger effect, where someone who is incompetent assumes, due to their lack of knowledge about what competence actually looks like, that they are super competent. Because of course they are. Okay, so glossing over briefly what an actual bunker is for and how it might be designed and the priorities involved, which you should probably consider if you're going to tell people that you use architecture to make designs more interesting. Repetition can actually be a really helpful thing in game design. For example, you can show the way that 3 different groups use an identical space. You could show how Silhouette are there they've got a few items stashed there because they sort of hoped this bunker would be available if they really needed it, but they never really intended to live there. You could show how a homeless guy, who, by the way, represents basically the unfortunate people of Paris who have no other option, has sort of just moved there out of desperation, and like he's trying to make himself at home, but he doesn't really have that much he can do. He's just one guy. And then you could show how the Majestic 12 have set up a base there, but also that this base represents a weakness of theirs in that they are a giant machine. And so in order to just like clear out some catacombs, which takes JC maybe 20 minutes, they need to set up a base, they need to get confirmation, they need to relay with various parties around the world, they need to be set up. So they're a giant machine and they move slowly, whereas the guerrilla resistance of Silhouette moves quickly but has far less resources.
We are not prepared to fight a war.
And the people of France are just basically trying to do whatever they can to survive. There are, of course, other benefits to repetition. If you let the player familiarize with an environment and know what to expect, you can design more interesting challenges so that they don't just feel the need to be dependent on cheap tactics like this. You can use it to signal a tonal shift of some sort so that the player sort of like comes to the entrance of the bunker and feels a feeling of anticipation and danger rather than confusion over why MJ12 apparently built this bunker and base hundreds of years in the past, or whatever. I give up. You can, of course, also use it from a project management perspective to make sure that your team has challenges but doesn't start bloating things out unnecessarily or overworking areas that aren't important or losing focus in general. And now negative space, because pretty much I think every modder who starts on a project like this goes, well, we got modern hardware now, so we don't have to worry about these constraints. We can load up everything, and having more items and more details in the world is going to improve every map, right? Wrong! You see, the reason that composition is an art is because it's very easy to go too far. Anyone who's tried drawing knows how easy it is to overwork. You start with the basic premise, then you add some things that help the audience understand. Then you add some things that aren't really necessary because the audience already knows it for themselves. And then if you're caustic creative, you add a whole bunch of shit that just clutters up the frame. Though, disclaimer, caustic creative are not the only ones who do this. Anyone who's watched the Star Wars prequels knows what I'm talking about.
It's so dense, every single image has so many things going on.
And that's because there are well-known benefits to negative space. For example, they allow people to enjoy and reflect on information they've been given, such as the tone and significance of the setting that they're in.
A lot of bones, huh? Paris graveyards were literally overflowing their retaining walls when the city ordered the bodies to be exhumed.
Having a quiet area gives the player a chance to relax, recharge, and get ready for upcoming challenges. If you don't have these in your game, you can end up with player burnout because people just become desensitized to everything. And particularly for this project, having maps that are not super cluttered and overly complicated really makes it easier for your NPCs to navigate, particularly since they're gonna have old school pathfinding AI that was never intended to, well, deal with the levels of bullshit. So if they didn't apply any of these design philosophies, what kind did they apply, I hear you ask? The answer to that is old school Dungeons and Dragons dungeon crawls. And for the uninitiated, a dungeon crawl is an adventure which doesn't really have a plot, doesn't really have a story, usually doesn't even really have characters. It's just a series of rooms and corridors where you have traps. Oh, God. And monsters to fight. And it's basically what everyone starts with in Dungeons and Dragons, because that's what most of the mechanics are focused on. So you use it as a means to learn the mechanics, and then you start trying to integrate more complicated approaches to gameplay. Deus Ex already implemented a lot more complicated approach to gameplay, and this is a bit late in the game to be trying to learn the basic mechanics or explore those. So we can say this is essentially an objective step backwards, not just because of the fact that none of it makes any sense and it gives the feeling that everything was designed just to be a video game.
Visual. Unidentified suspect.
I don't remember anything of the catacombs from when I played this 17 years ago. Most time flies.
Visual.
I have no idea where I am. Nowhere does this become more apparent than if you just look at the difference between the maps from vanilla Deus Ex, where we can see that it's a tourist map that's been marked up in a hurry, and the map in Revision, which is the most D&D looking map I have ever seen. Seriously, all it needs is like goblins instead of these weird extra markups that I guess are just here because I don't know why they're there, they just are. Okay, this may actually be more D&D. They've edited the ending so that in order to leave this area, you have to either know about this secret way in or to blow up this section here, which isn't flagged as destructible, and basically you will only find out about it by trying to blow up everything, I guess. I don't know. I found it by blowing up everything, like literally.
sewers can take you anywhere in the Champs-Élysées, where you will find the club. I just got an unexpected message from Jaime Reyes. He's at a cafe and wants to see you. He says it's urgent. The cafe address is number 19. Above, I'm showing MJ-12 troops and the Paris police. Also some bots. The police won't bother you, but stay away from the troopers.
What's the deal?
So yeah, Majestic 12's occupation at this area is scattergunned at best and half-assed rushed, more accurately. The combination of tranquilizer darts and flamethrowers just really amuses me. But let's check out the rest of the city.
You have abandoned your own son.
Perhaps I want to take the metro to see my mother, yes? Should I forget mother and my own freedom to travel so that Michelle can have a small salary?
These are difficult times, I don't deny it.
Don't mention it.
This is like the only ad I can find that's even vaguely related to the Deus Ex universe. Like, I don't think that ISIS or anyone else in Caustic Creative really cares about the lore or the setting. I think they just like scribbling on things.
Do not force me to report you.
Okay.
You found the club, the only one to stay open during martial law. They've hiked up the cover, but you will have to pay if you want to find out if Nicolette is inside. La Porte de l'Enfer. Resistant members aren't the only ones fond of the discreet staff and plentiful shadows. Watch your back.
Oh, more fish, but now we've got like glass over the top. And a rat. Okay, so briefly, now that we know Harris is rightfully ashamed of Lucky Money, before we go on, why don't we think of some of the themes and designs that you might come up with if you were designing a bar like this?
300 credits.
So here's some I think of. A goth occultism themed bar enjoying the benefits of nonconformity. A metal bar where privacy is covered by loudness. A homage bar to the bar in Cabaret or Rick's Cafe America from Casablanca. A kitsch bar with devils and cartoony imagery around. Or a futuristic recreation of an authentic Heaven and Hell club found in Paris during the 19th century. Yeah, those were actually a thing. They're actually pretty awesome, and admittedly, the article I'm linking to is more recent than when they worked on this, but there's a blog post about them, and also there's these things called libraries that I encourage people to check out. Oh, okay. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, this is going to be the second most underwhelming bar that I have ever been to.
What will it be? A snack for 10 credits? Wine for 120.
There's like a snack right there and you do something, but what? You have cigarettes and beers and liquor and stuff that you're not willing to sell me? I'm not good enough to buy your cigarettes? Okay, now literally no bar on earth is going to waste this much floor real estate on corridors and messing around when they could be using it on tables and things where people are going to spend money. This isn't a bar, this is like some weird private club for about 12 members. So I think they're undercharging at 300 creds per door entry.
Busy night, huh?
Qu'est-ce que je vous sers?
Never mind.
So between this guy and the fact that there only seem to be a few people for this now massively over luxurious bar, I mean this is ridiculous. This makes 5-star cocktail lounges that I've been in look cheap. So I feel like this is less a bar for Silhouette and more a bar for like Bob Page. Is this Bob Page's accountant? Oh god, what's going on?
Pretty lady, huh?
Hi, baby. What's your name?
JC.
Mysterious. Want to know my initials?
How about you tell me something about the people who come here?
Anything you like, cutie. 20 credits.
Okay.
So, who do you want to find?
What can you tell me about Nicolette Duclair?
I see now. You are in love, you poor man. She has already given her heart to one of the revolutionaries.
I'm not in love. Could you tell me if she's here?
Now Camille actually amuses me intently because after Harris bragging about this being an ugly club, it seems apparent that he doesn't actually know what a go-go dancer is or what their function in a club may be, since it was, well, it wasn't ideal presentation in the original, but it was pretty clear that she was supposed to be dancing for tips. Not taking her clothes off, just dancing. And hence why it's not so weird that JC can come over to her and just be giving her 20 chits at a time in exchange for information, and she's all flirty and friendly and stuff. That is completely lost in revision now, and instead what we have is a woman who is just apparently on the dance floor asking random people for money for no reason.
Yeah? What are you doing in a place like this?
I'm working on a novel. If I dress up like a nurse twice a week, I make enough money to write the other 5 days.
Not bad.
It's funny how the traffic of credits.
What kind of fucking clubs have these guys been going to?
I love this place.
Claude? Oh, sorry, my mistake.
Okay, seriously now, what? Did they just, like, grab random assets and figure no one would remember these from Hong Kong?
I'm looking for Nicolette Duclair.
So?
Do you know her?
I know her name. I know that her mother called her Angel.
So ultimately what they've done here is they've converted this from a club that was being run by an opportunist who was willing to exploit various groups, such as Silhouette, to generate profit under martial law when basically no one else was being able to operate, to turning this into some sort of like elite trust funder club, which, like, okay, Nicolette was always meant to be a rich girl, but she was meant to be the anomaly for that, not the standard. And I don't think even like the Illuminati can afford to drink in this bar.
Let's hit it.
Okay, well, there's not really a lot to talk about leaving the club except for this one bit. I don't really know if it was thematically helpful, but sad Gunther in the rain made me laugh. Which probably means that no, it was not thematically helpful.
I had not wanted to see this place again.
So, for the chateau, they changed fuck all. Mostly all that's actually been changed is now there's these, they're kind of nice gardens, I suppose, around it, which does raise the question of who has been attending to these gardens, but whatever, let's not overthink this. So instead, what I want to overthink is the thematic tone deafness that they've had. Specifically, I would like to look at how they've overlooked that there's certain themes here, which on a surface level, yeah, okay, these could be to project that living under MJ12 rule is basically hell on earth. But it could also be because we're building up to meeting this guy. Well, specifically, we're building up to allowing him to introduce himself. He's a man of wealth and taste, who's been around for many a long year and stole many a man's soul and faith. Yeah, I'm basically saying that Morgan Everett is the devil in this, and we're going to make a Faustian deal with him when we agree to help the Illuminati. But, you know, why would we want to build up to a theme like that when we can have fashion, sampans, whatever the fuck is going on here? Ultimately, this all represents the real problem with Gothic Creative's approach to revision. The refusal to consider that this may actually be a deep and complicated text rather than just a silly video game where you can just chuck stuff around and then call it an improvement because you got more pixels, more bags of garbage, whatever the fuck they felt like adding, higher definition, more desirable products advertised in France. Deus Ex wasn't mind-blowing because of the technology involved or because that it was the first game to come up with the idea of RPG options or buildings that actually looked like places. It was mind-blowing because it was a game where the developers wanted you to step in and basically feel like you were genuinely involved with the story.
I know her name. I know that her mother called her Angel.
And in order to do that, there has to be a story, there has to be a surface story, and there has to be deeper layers of story for the people who are gonna look for that deeper material. And that's there in vanilla. More of it could have been added, but instead, Revision just kind of erases all of that and calls it progress because narcissism. So, speaking of narcissism, here's my final thoughts as a guy who doesn't make mods as to what people who make mods can learn from this section of Revision. The first is the obvious that if you're going to make a project like this for a wide audience, like everyone who likes Deus Ex, then don't make it all about yourself, or more specifically, don't make it about your ego. that's going to be a disaster right there. The second one is don't get carried away just trying to impress people or try to be innovative or pretend that you can bring something new and exciting that you can't. Focus on what you know and look for opportunities where maybe you see something in the original, but other people do not see it as easily, but would enjoy it if they could see it. And lastly, if you want to sort of pitch this to a more modern audience and you want it to be clear that this is a cleanup or a revision, look for bits and pieces that the developers didn't get to finish themselves or that they didn't have time or priorities to work as much, and therefore you can revise them. Unless, of course, it takes away the opportunity to do stuff like this in the bathrooms.